Welcome to Uncork Your Mind and this edition of Winefabet Street. J is for Jampal. Now, Jampal is a very rare grape that is found in Portugal. And on this
Hi,
podcast,
everybody.
We're going to learn about the history of Jampal,
welcome
about
to
its unique flavor
Street.
Profile, the winemaking,
we are coming
and the
from
so I hope
Paso
you
Robles,
enjoy
California.
Welcome to Uncork Your Mind, where we take the intimidation out of wine with your host, Debbie Giaquindo, the Hudson Valley wine goddess.
We are all over the world today, and we are talking about Jampal, and I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. Junior, did I correct that? Did I say that correctly? Oh, now you're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, you pronounced that perfectly.
So this is when we decided to do this grape, I really was like, there's no way we are going to find somebody to come on and talk about this grape variety and to be able to taste this wine and do all this. And thank you so much to the Wines of Portugal for helping to arrange this and introducing Winefabet Street to you. So we are very excited for today's episode, Jampal. Rah! All right. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Lori. I am a UC Davis winemaking graduate, owner of Dresita Wines in Paso Robles. I'm a champagne specialist, WSET level 2, a Spanish wine scholar and Côte d'Aron. And I just can't wait to learn more about this grape variety. So Deb, how about you?
I am Debbie Giaquindo. I'm known as the Hudson Valley Wine Goddess. I'm a certified specialist of wine, a wine location specialist in Port and Champagne, and a certified wine sherry specialist. I'm author of the book, Tapping the Hudson Valley, Day Trips and Weekend Itineraries to visit the Hudson Valley wine region. And I'm a partner in Trio North Wildwood, a restaurant in North Wildwood, and we're opening for the season next Friday. So I've got a lot on my plate this week.
Yes. And today we have, there's Sue, but goes by Junior. And we rambled off a bunch of credentials or whatever, but oh my God, your credentials. Tell us a little bit about you and how you got to your credentials. And before we get into the grape, we'll go more about you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Debbie, for this great introduction. And also thank you, as you said, thanks to Wines of Portugal, but also thank you to Eugenio Jardim, who is the ambassador of Wines of Portugal in USA. He's a great communicator, he's a great friend, and he is the one who put us together. So thanks to him that I'm here. My name, as you said, and you pronounced it very well, is Dirceu Viana Jr., and I was born in Brazil. And I live in London, as you suggested. And because of the difficulties of people pronouncing my first name, most people call me Junior here, so it's fine. And I came here in sort of late 80s from Brazil, where I was born, and I was studying for law and forest engineering. And when I came to London, early 90s, I started studying wine. So I work in the on-trade, I work in the off-trade. I've been working for a very large wine distribution company for about 20 years. So after 30 years, 3 decades of experience, I decided to open my own consultancy company. So I consult all over the world for wineries. I work at the Wines of Portugal. I write for a publication in the UK called Decanter. And I've written a book also. So I do all sorts of things. And I'm a speaker also. I've been to the USA a few times to speak about all different subjects. And that's more or less what I do.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit
of everything. Kind of like all of us. A little bit of got our hands in different.
Exactly.
But keeps us busy and out of trouble, right?
keep us busy, keep us out of trouble, and keeps me traveling sometimes a little bit too much because I've got projects in Spain and Croatia and Austria, Portugal, South America. So it's I spend a lot of my time in airports.
It's funny. As much as I love to travel, I get that. Like I love traveling, but it's always kind of nice to come home And then I'm usually wishing I was traveling again after I got home. But it is, airports are not exactly as romantic as people think it is when they don't travel.
Exactly.
All right. So before we get into the interview and learning more about Jampal, we have Elmo, who is our little spokes guy here. So we're going to start our video and hopefully it works. All right.
Cool.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Jampal. And so we're going to start off elaborating a little bit more about you, Junior. So as you mentioned, you're originally from Brazil and you studied forest engineering and law. So first, what is forest engineering?
Well, it's basically how you optimize all the resources from a forest. Actually, managing forests, especially in Brazil, we have lots of forests, and there's a lot of different industries, paper industry as an example. So it's actually how you manage those forests, and it's quite vital for us, quite important for our environment now.
Wow. And so, I guess like with cork and all of that stuff, engineering, managing,
Exactly.
how to not overtake from the trees and all of that stuff.
Exactly that. Cork is a great example. How you manage a cork tree is incredible. The longevity, when you plant, when you harvest, how long does it take for you to harvest, and actually how you manage to optimize the tree itself.
Wow. Okay. And then you mentioned that you've been in wine industry for 30 years or whatever, but how did you go from law to finding that wine? What was that wine that you were like, okay, maybe I want to go in this direction?
I don't think it was so much a wine. It wasn't at that moment, but it was more. I needed to do this because when I came to the UK, actually, I came. I have lived in the USA for a year. I finished my high school in the middle of nowhere, but in the middle of great people in Ohio State, in Youngstown, Ohio. So after I finished university, my high school, I went back to Brazil. I started doing my university, and after a while, I was enjoying the forest engineering because it's to do with forest, to do with all sorts of things, a lot of maths, which I like, a lot of science, a lot of biology, chemistry, and so on. But law I wasn't enjoying so much the law aspect, and it was quite hard because I was doing two courses in two different universities at the same time. And I said, I'm gonna give myself a break. So I came to London. I came to London for a few months, and it was summer. It was wonderful. It was beautiful summer of 1989. The opposite what is today, because the skies are gray. I'm looking out, the skies are gray. It's raining. So anyway, I was fooled by the charm of the great weather of London in this time. And I ended up staying for another month and so on. And after a while, I decided, am I going to go back to the university after 6 months, which that was the period that I had at the time, or I was going to stay here. So I decided to stay for a bit longer. So I had to start to work. And to cut the story short, because I spoke English at the time, very quickly I went up and I became a manager of a restaurant. And with that responsibility, I needed to do the wine lists. And I said, wow, I don't have no experience whatsoever. So then I decided to start looking for what's the best school, where can I learn? And that's when I started doing my WSET level 1, 2, and 3 very quickly. And then I fell in love with wine. And
wow.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yeah.
And yeah, still in London.
Still in London. Yeah, still in London.
Oh.
So you wear a lot of hats, and Junior, in your business, you're importer, buyer, consultant, project manager, wine judge, wine tourism, winemaker, just to name a few. What is your favorite aspect of the wine world?
My favorite aspect, it's a great question. It's the continuous learning, because I do have a lot of different projects, and one thing you have to do as a master of wine, we have to abide by a very strict code of conduct, one of which is a conflict of interest. So what I do is actually I have different projects in different parts of the world that there is no conflict at all. For example, as like Eugenio does his job for Wines of Portugal in USA, I do a very similar job for Wines of Portugal in Europe. So what I try to do is in Portugal, as an example, I don't work with any producer. And I also write for a publication in Portugal. So I have no commercial attachment with a producer. That way I'm free to select any wine I need, to write about any wine I want to write about without any conflict. So that's how I keep that this going. And going back to the favorite aspect, I like the very technical, like microbiology, to do with yeast, to do with bacteria and so on. So I do that for one company. I work in terms of wine producing in another country. So it just I just keep learning all the time and meeting amazing people and exchanging knowledge. And this is the greatest. That's what I enjoy the most, to answer your question.
That is pretty cool. Like that, and I do think in anything, but especially in wine, the more you know you need to know more.
I totally agree.
No, I knew.
You just can't stop learning.
I knew absolutely everything about wine when I finished the WSET level 3. I knew everything. After a while, and now I know that I know absolutely nothing. And then you just have to be humble enough to say, you know what, every day you learn something. And if you have that attitude, it's amazing, because every day you do learn and you're able to exchange knowledge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Jampal is actually from Portugal. And so before we get into the grape itself, let's learn a little bit about Portugal. Like, where is it located? You know, is it, you know, what is its relative size? And what is it best known for in terms of like maybe a food and a wine? Like, what is Portugal best known for?
Oh, that's Portugal. It's if you look at the map of Europe, it's located in the extreme sort of western part of that. If you look at the map, the part that's sticking out, the Iberia Peninsula on the left hand, and on the sort of the left hand side, you have Spain and Portugal, and Portugal is the westernmost part of that Iberia Peninsula. It's a small country. I think it's probably the size of New Jersey. It's not maybe not bigger than that. But it's actually, if you in terms of area, it's 92,000 kilometers square, which is not very much.
Oh.
Basically, it's roughly 200 kilometers from east to west, and 600 kilometers from north to south. So you can easily go from north to south in sort of a day's driving. But amazing diversity in terms of terroir, amazing diversity in terms of soil, a lot of different, talking about wine now, a great diversity in terms of climatic. It's almost in a crossroad between continental climate coming from Spain and the Atlantic influence from the west, and some Mediterranean from the bottom, from the south of Portugal. So it's a very small country, but it's an amazing diversity of its terroir. And if you layer that with an incredible number of indigenous grape varieties, some of which I've even myself, I'm going there once or twice a month sometimes. Even some of them I'm discovering now. So there is a lot to discover in Portugal. It's a really it's incredible country, and I see like I'm going back like 40 or 50 years. In this country, we used to in Europe basically we used to drink a lot of German wines, sweet German wines, and then from then on we went to slightly oaky, rich Chardonnay, especially coming from Australia. And then now we're moving on to Pinot Grigio and Proseccos and Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. And most recently, if I speak to friends of mine who are buyers, who are working in retail, the interest that Portugal is having in recent years, last 2-3 years, has been amazing. So I'm really excited. I drink wines. I've got a nice cellar. I drink wines from all over the world. But I'm really, when I speak about Portugal, I get really excited because it's always an ability to keep learning.
Oh, so exciting! I have never gotten to visit Portugal, and I hope one day I do. I get to go there. I adore Spain. And so I've been close, but I haven't been to Portugal.
Those are both on my bucket list. My son's been to Portugal because he actually studied in Spain for a semester. But,
I think if you go talking about globally, if you go to Napa is beautiful, it's a beautiful part of the world. But if you're asking, and I think I know most of the wine growing regions in the world. Stellenbosch, it's amazing. New Zealand is beautiful, but if you and you will have, I'm sure you will have a chance to visit the Douro Valley. It's the beauty is absolutely incredible. It's jaw dropping. It's just amazing.
Fingers crossed.
It will.
Absolutely, me too. I'm right there with you. So there was an article a few years ago about Jampal saying, it's nearly extinct. And all the research that I did beforehand too, it talked about how it's almost extinct. Why do you think it got to this classification? How and why was there some like disease that the vines picked up, or the winemakers didn't want to use it? They didn't feel it, why?
Well, it's a bit difficult to speculate, but if you go back decades ago, the vineyards in Portugal, they were planted not by parcels, but they were mixed plantings. So you have 10, 20, 30, 40 different varieties together. And the reason for that is just a sort of an insurance that if in terms of pests, in terms of disease, in terms of birds, so they're all the different varieties will ripen at different times. So people didn't even know what was planted in most of the parcels anyway. And Jampal, it was one of them. They would have mixed planting in the vineyard, or sometimes you would have maybe one row. And it was virtually extinct, and the reason for that I can only guess, but it's a very, very good guess, and it's not very high yielding. It's a difficult variety to grow. It gives a very irregular, ripens very irregularly, and is prone to some diseases. So basically, if you have a vineyard, if you have a plot of land, and you have 10 varieties, and one of them is not producing very much, it's very, very small yield, and have to go back 30, 40 years ago, and we're not looking so much for, especially after the Second World War, we're not so much looking so much for quality and all that. We're looking for quantity.
Right.
So if the varieties are not producing, you get rid of it. So I think if I have to answer your question with one word, it will be yield.
Okay.
Low yield.
And that is something that happens sadly still in today's world.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
That if it's not producing the money, like you think old vines in, Right? It can produce a wonderful wine, but it doesn't produce a lot of wine.
Exactly.
And people who aren't, I'll say it, people who have a lot of money and just are buying up wineries because they want to own a winery and they just want money in terms of it. They're not in love with the concept of the vineyards and the wines. They're ripping them up. And it's so sad to know that these vines are being ripped up just because they're not producing tonnage.
Yeah.
And it's not always all about tonnage.
Yeah.
It's about quality and, yield. If it's small yield, it might produce great quality wine.
Yep. But people aren't understanding that. Yeah.
This is a case in point. Jampal is a case in point because it was rescued by a Brazilian actually from the brink of extinction. It was going towards that way. If you look at the wine grape book that written by Jancis Robinson, it says that I think Jampal has got about 100 hectares planted, which is actually when I investigated this 2 or 3 years ago with the Institute of Vine and Wine in Portugal, they told me that there are much less than 100 hectares planted. It's actually only 32 hectares, 32.25 hectares.
Wow.
To be precise. So it was going toward extinction, and what happened was this person who happens to be a football player. He came from Brazil to play football in Portugal, and he got injured, and after that he was looking for other things to do. He was he got into fitness. He has all sorts of fitness places in Portugal, and I think he was looking for a plot of land outside Lisbon to build something to do with his fitness business. And so he bought this property in Chaleiros, which is about 25, 30 kilometers sort of west of Lisbon. And he started to clear the plot, and he found some old ruins, I think Roman ruins that go back to 700 years old. And he really liked to, and his name is Andre Mans, and he likes to preserve the heritage, and he really respects the local culture. If you ever go to this place, if you go there today, it is amazing because he's doing such a great work for this little village. But basically, he started making friends around the village, and one day a lady knocked at his door and said, "Listen, I've got this small plot of land," and I think he lets them know that he liked wine, or if he wanted to make wine, something like that. And this lady said, "Listen, my husband passed away. My son is I think he's working in Lisbon, working somewhere. He's not interested in this plot, and I got some vines there. Would you like to buy from me?" And he said, "Yes." That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to make just a little bit of wines to share with his friends. So he'll make small quantity of high quality. So he went to look at this plot, and there was mostly what was planted as variety called Castelão. And there was one row of this white variety, which no one knew what it was. So he asked the lady, she said, "I don't know what it is." So he called a couple of experts, they didn't know. And they sent this for analysis. And it came back, this is a very rare variety called Jampal. And he had about 200 vines of Jampal on this plot. And he made his first vintage. I think he only made a few hundred bottles for his friend, but he liked the results. And as you guys were saying early on, he's sort of looking not so much for quantity, looking for quality. He liked very much the results, and then the rest is history. He started developing and planting, and today he's got instead of 200 vines, I think he's got 16,000 vines. So he's got He's planted. Let me think. He's got about 10 hectares in 11 different plots.
Wow.
So
And now so was he just propagating all on his own? So he created a nursery to...
Yeah, it's everything on its own, because there is this variety is rarely planted elsewhere. So everything that was done, it was done from there, which is actually is a bit of a challenge, because one of the problems with Jampal, one of them, there are quite a few, and then hence why people don't plant it so much. It's quite prone to leaf roll virus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's one of the things. Then it's problem with botrytis, it's problem with colure. It's all sorts of things. Low yield, as I mentioned earlier. So it's a very difficult variety to manage.
So do you think that Andre Mans, like, you think that he first, and I guess this is just what you think, but do you think he just was like, this is so cool, I have a grape that nobody else has, and then he was like, okay, I'm going to keep this, and then I kind of like the way this wine tastes?
Yeah.
So he was more of like a historical buff in terms of keeping it.
Actually, I bumped into him about 2 days ago in Germany, and I didn't even speak about what we're doing today, but I should have done it. But he's a very smart guy, and he's a businessman. So I think in his mind, knowing him, he probably the first thing is he made the wine, he liked it. So that's the important. The first step. And the second thing is a good businessman. So he thought, hang on a second, there is no other varieties. There is only one Jampal in the market. Is a great unique selling point. Why not? So he bet on this variety, and he's doing extremely well.
All right, well, good for him. I guess we need to give him a very big thank you.
Yeah. And I'm sure that I am certain there are many more Jampals, sort of varieties like that in Portugal. So hopefully people carry on doing those things and bringing other grapes from extinction.
I love it.
I do too.
Yeah.
And now you actually answered our next question of how much is there. So we went from about 200 vines to several hectares of it, and he's not the only one. But I read, I think on his website, I read that he is the only producer of 100%.
Yes.
Jampal.
Yes.
So do people blend a lot with it?
Without knowing, yes, they do. Because the grape, according to the Institute of Vines and Wines, the grape is traditionally cultivated in Lisbon, and also appears in Beira Interior, which is more towards the northern part of the country, center part of the country. And it is also allowed to be planted in Setúbal, which is south of the river, south of Lisbon, actually. Just across the bridge from Lisbon, you're in Peninsula de Setúbal. It's allowed to be planted there. It's allowed to be planted in a Douro, and it also appears some vines in Tejo. Why don't we see more single variety Jampal? Because they are not vineyards. They are all, I'm guessing they are all on old vines. They are mixed planted. There will be 2 vines here and 1 vine there. So that no one has planted plots as Andre is doing now.
Right. Wow. All right. So we are, my wine is about 200 miles away from me at the moment. So I don't have the pleasure of being able to taste it, but I cannot wait to taste it next week. But yes, so show us that glass and tell us. The bottle. Yes.
Okay.
Donna Fatima. And I have to admit, I got a little confused because, us Americans, we put our names on everything. So tell us, where does Donna Fatima come from? Because it is Andre Mans. It's Mans Winery.
Yes, the label says Donna Fatima, and he told me the story when I visited his vineyard before the pandemic, and this is the name of his mother-in-law.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's very nice.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good.
But yes, it's nice. He pays homage to his mother-in-law, but not in a nice way, because when he first tasted the variety, he smiles, he laughs because it was just wine in his mother-in-law, because the Jampal has got very high acidity. And in Portugal, when you say somebody doesn't translate well to English, but acida is acid. But it says his grandmother was sort of, I don't know how to explain this, but she was like almost like a bitter person, an aggressive sort of person.
Crazy.
So it's sort of a joke. It's almost like a joke on his mother-in-law. So I'm gonna name this wine with your name, because it's got very high acidity.
It's racy. Yeah. She's racy.
It's sort of, it's not a, but it's a jokey. It was a joke thing, and it stuck. And that's the name of the wine itself.
Okay. All right. So tell us about taste it for us, to tell us what we would be tasting as soon as we can get it in our glass.
Oh, it's a shame you guys don't have it on with you, but. The wine itself it's very delicately scented. It's very elegant. Okay. It's very seductive. It's got some notes of citrus, like a citrus blossom. Wow. There's some fresh dough, which I think it does some work with the leaves. So you got those little biscuity, doughy notes. Some fresh dough, some lemon butter.
Oh my God, this sounds wonderful.
I want to jump through the screen.
I want a glass.
Yeah. The best way to describe, if you guys, no one has a glass in front of you, people who are watching, think of aromas that are similar to Albarino.
Okay.
Albarino.
Oh, okay. So, that makes
slightly
sense.
Citrus, slightly, some grapefruit, citrus fruits, some floral notes. Think of really racy acidity of like Riesling.
Okay.
And because it does this work with lees and the wine sees some oak, French oak, but older oak and light toast, it develops a lovely texture. So think of Albarino with the acidity of a Riesling, with the texture, with the mouthfeel of Chardonnay.
Wow.
All right.
Put together. That's what you get, more or less.
All right. I like that.
I like that too.
All right. So now, do we know the parentage of Jampal? Do we,
in terms of the parents, I don't think there's been an in-depth analysis. No, I don't think that hasn't been done yet. One of the parents, however, I think is known. It's a variety called Castelão. And Castelão is a red variety, and used to be the most planted red variety in Portugal in the past. Today, I think it's not. I think it's the 5th or 6th most planted, and is used in blends and so on. But it's a red variety. is quite vigorous. Is highly productive, and that's Castelão. That's one of the parents. The other one is unknown.
Okay. And so but it has been determined that it is actually indigenous to the Terras region of Portugal.
Yes, I think the people they usually say you put the origin of the variety where you find the most genetic diversity, and that is points towards Lisbon. Yes, so that's the origin of it.
So that's where this area is, just around the Lisbon area?
Yeah, if you look, if you take a car from the center of Lisbon, depending how the traffic is, half an hour driving up. It's half an hour, 40 minutes from northwest. I would say northwest of Lisbon.
Okay.
And so the area itself, what is the terroir like in that region?
Okay, we drove up half an hour from Lisbon to more towards sort of northwest towards the sea. This village called Chaleiros is about 6 kilometers from the ocean. It's very, very windy. One thing you need to know. It's in the middle of a valley. Some of the vineyards are planted the north facing, some are planted the south facing. It's got quite a high variation of temperature. In the summer, you go there when is variation not so much during seasons, but also during the day. So you go in the seasons. In the summer, it's very hot, and the winters are very cold. But in the summer itself, it can go. It can go as over 40 degrees in hot part of the day, and then drop down to mid-20s at night. So it's quite a huge variation of temperature. And in the winter, you could go as low as 0, and when it's warm, is sort of 10, 11 degrees. And the vines here are planted in different altitudes. So you have starting from 50 all the way to about 250 meters of altitude. And it may not seem very much, but it's the difference in temperature could be as high as 5 degrees between the bottom. So it's a lot of variation, even in that way. The soil itself is mostly clay and limestone, very stony. It's very, very, very labor intensive, very hard to plant vineyards there. It's very stony. Because I said to you, it's only 6 kilometers from the sea. That area was under the sea about 5 million years ago. So if you look very carefully in the vineyards, you see seashells and some fossils. And
so does it have a lot of marine influence?
Yeah, it is. You do find a lot of especially the wind. Quite windy there. You got this, and actually sometimes even in the wine itself, you got some lovely salinity.
Is it similar to like Galicia? Because it sounds like the winds and the temperature.
Let me think. Galicia is going to be my next trip on Monday. So
okay. So I'll ask you that next week.
No, I know that. I've been there many times. I know very well.
If you want to put me in your suitcase for Galicia, I'll be more than I'll fly to London and get in your suitcase ticket.
It's very similar. Well, no, it's not similar. The one thing they have in common is the proximity to the sea.
Okay.
But the soils will be different because you have a lot of granite and some sand. Yes. And also in Galicia, it's quite humid. It's the average rainfall there is very, very high. So
higher, okay.
Yeah, and this place is less rainfall, and also there is more sunlight. But I think that the one common denominator will be the proximity of the sea, and that's windy sea breeze and a little bit of salinity.
Okay, cool. All right. Deb?
We already covered that.
Number 10.
Yeah, we covered that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just go. Go ahead, Deb.
Yeah. No, it's yours. Go ahead.
So just how does it typically get vinified?
How this one get vinified? Well, I explained to you about the terroir itself. It's quite challenging and is quite hilly and is very difficult even to walk because of the rocks. So the reason I'm telling you that is everything it's hand harvested.
Okay.
And it's hand harvested. It's quite late actually because of the Jampal is actually picked, if I remember correctly, is picked after the red grapes. So it's sort of late September. Hand harvested, comes into the winery, is destemmed and is very gently crushed and goes into the press. After that, is actually they give one of the things I remember he's telling me they do about a 72-hour skin contact at 8 degrees just to give them a little bit more structure and to extract all those flavors. And so after pressing, and is a pneumatic press, the juice goes to stainless steel and starts the fermentation on stainless steel tanks. One thing I said to you, I've been there before the pandemic. I am certain if I go back there, it will be completely different because when I went there last time, they were just about to they were building a new facility.
Oh, okay.
So I was walking there. So this is gonna be anyway. I'm sure they will be completely different today. But so the wines that goes into stainless steel tanks start fermentation at sort of 14 degrees, which is not too low, not too high. And after a while, I think it goes to 2/3 of the fermentation. It finishes in barrels. It finishes in French barrels. And then
okay.
Is it used or is it new?
I think it's a combination.
Okay.
I remember asking this question. It's a combination of is French barrels, light toasted, and it spends 12 months. And there are different sizes. I remember when I asked this question, there were different sizes of barrels, and that's basically it. What they do apart from this is when you get a wine, you taste the lovely energy and the lovely racy acidity and freshness. And they don't do the malolactic here.
Okay.
So Jampal usually has high acid anyway, and they don't do the malo. So they actually expect a wine with really racy freshness. But what they do to balance this acidity is they work on the lees. So the wine spends 6 months on the lees, and they do batonnage to give them more sort of texture and density and apart from that, so the wine is better balanced in terms of acidity, gives that lovely texture, and adds a little bit of complexity. So this is after those 6 months, they do batonnage for 6 months, and after that, spend 6 months in the bottle.
Okay.
So that's it.
So I'm guessing with that, so they're starting fermentation in the tank, but then moving it to barrel. So that's to help with the acidity, to help give some complexity and body to it also, so that it's finishing the fermentation in barrel. So it's an interesting concept, because on the opposite spectrum, if you're taking a red grape variety that you want to soften it a bit, right? That's you're taking it off of fermentation in a barrel, and you're moving, or you're taking it off of fermentation and you're moving it like halfway through, so that it calms it down. So it's following that concept, but more for that acidity. So wow, that's actually pretty intensive too. So
yes, it is labor intensive, but one of the things, I mean, if you just take the must and put all into different barrels, the problem you have there, and you have, let's say if you have 20 barrels, and some wineries have many more than that. If you have 20 or 50 barrels, you lost the control of the fermentation, because you don't know what each barrel is doing. So there are 50 different children to look after, right? Because you don't know when they're going to start. So if you put in a barrel, one fermentation could start straight away, another one could take a few hours, another one could take a few days. So by letting the fermentation starting in the inox tank, the fermentation is established. So then you can put in a barrel, they're all already running. So you don't have any surprises with the stack fermentation, high volatility, high VA, and so on and so forth. So it's a more secure way of conducting the fermentation. So I think you achieve more security. You have more control, and you have the complexity of doing the fermentation in the barrel. And also, in my opinion, and I do work as a consultant, so I have to come up with protocols, winemaking protocols. The oak is much better integrated. The earlier you start fermentation in barrel, the more integrated you get the wine. And in this case here, the wine is beautifully integrated.
Yes, they get, the marriage starts earlier, so they get through that rocky period early on, and they find their bliss.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Do you think that more wineries will start planning Jampal?
I would like to think so. When you have such a unique selling point, when you have something different, If you ask Andre, he probably would not want a competition. But,
he wants to be the sole producer.
Yeah, exactly. You're the only one, so you can keep saying the same thing all the time. But I think if there are, that's one side of the story. But then if you have, you don't want 100 Jampal producers, and it will never be 100 because the variety is so fussy. The variety is really difficult to manage. But if there was, like, say, 5 or 6 or 10, let's say, it would be great for us, because we could do different tastes of only Jampal and talk about different styles and so on. Right. And also, I think it will raise the quality of everyone, because I think this wine, he's a perfectionist. So I think he's raising his own standard every single year. But if there are 5 or 6 competitors, you make sure that you're always looking to improve for certain.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned, that it is a pretty late ripener and all of that stuff, but then you talked about the ocean influence and all of that. So, and it being finicky, is it prone to mold? Is it with the breeze, or is the wind helping it kind of dry out a bit?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because I think the skins are a little bit thin. Even before that, the bunches are quite small.
Oh, okay.
Hence lower yield. But the skins are thin. When the skins are thin, I mean, the chances of you getting a fungal infection is much higher than if you got a thick skin variety like Albarino, for example. So that's one problem. When it does ripen, actually, one of the things you can tell or in a vineyard, if it's Jampal or something else, it got some brown dots on the skins. Right. So that's one way of identifying Jampal.
Okay. I saw an image of the grapes, and it did have those brown freckles.
What did it? In that case, you saw an image when the grapes were ripening. Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's like, I think Bicol is the same. Bicol has some Bicol from Bairrada also has some brown dots when it ripens. So yes, one of the characteristics.
And how is it? Is it head train? How are they training it?
This is a good question. The new vineyards, the new vines they are planted now. I think that the old ones, if I remember, they were actually bush trained. They're yeah. But the new ones now they're on VSP.
Okay.
So let's go shoot positioning. They are they are grown up to 60 centimeters from the ground. And from the vine up to the top of the vine is a maximum of 160. So you got 1 meter of the canopy. So to answer your question, one quick word is VSP.
Okay.
The new vines. And usually, and one more thing I remember, and they planted usually because it's a very poor soil, so they planted usually on 1 meter for each vine. Fine. And they leave the rows of about the new vineyards now that they're leaving, I think 2.5 meters between rows.
Okay.
So you got 4,000 plants per hectare, I suppose.
Wow.
Okay.
And is the rootstock, is it natural or is it like a...
No, they have to use American rootstocks.
American rootstocks. Okay. Well, we have dogs barking. My dog barks. You got the fireman. Lori's got the fireman coming by. You're enjoying the glass.
Yes.
What would you pair with it? What kind of foods would you pair with this wine?
Remember what the way I described the wine with that sort of Albarino, Riesling, Chardonnay sort of thing. So any white fish. I'm thinking of a high quality fish like monkfish, sea bass, a grouper, or something like that. a really high quality fish, and you don't have to mess so much with the fish, with sauce. It's just a lovely, beautiful fish. I think will go really, really, really well. Salad, a nice chicken salad, lobster. Why not? Well, there's nothing wrong with the lobster.
Well, we've got monkfish and sea bass on our opening menu.
So there you go.
Anything like that. A seafood risotto, I think it would go beautifully. It would go well with that, especially if it's a bit rich, because so this acidity will cut through beautifully. It's such a wonderful story to tell, and the wine. But it's not only a story; it's a great USP. But it's the quality of the wine is actually very good. So it's not just a gimmick. The wine is great. But I would treat it as, if you think of a sort of again, it's a mixture of a sort of really extreme northern Burgundy with a southern Burgundy, because it got the acidity of like a Chablis. It's got some sunshine. It's got the kiss of sunshine of a sort of a Maconnais. If you go on sort of in between everything I told you, fish, chicken, seafood risotto, and I'm sure you'll do very well. And the other thing is, I'm looking at this wine here. The label says 12.5. In the chemical analysis, I think it's 12.6, which is exactly what more or less low in alcohol.
Right.
And it's 6 o'clock in London, so I am allowing myself a sip of wine. It's 6 p.m. It's a great wine just to have a glass. It's refreshing. It's low in alcohol. It's great by itself.
I like wines that you can drink by themselves.
Yeah, you do it by itself. It's no problem at all. It's low in alcohol. It's got beautiful acidity. It's bone dry. It's got less than 1 gram per liter of sugar, so it's bone dry. And it just helps it helps with the diversity of the wine in general. I love that. That's what I love about Portugal. I drink wines from all over the world. I enjoy wines from all over the world. People say, "Oh, what's your favorite?" I don't have a favorite wine, but I like
whichever one is in my glass.
That's right.
Whatever is it. I like the diversity. I like to learn something new. If you take into account, for example, look at the statistics from the OIV, and there are over 10,000, according to them, there are over 10,000 known grape varieties in the world. 13 of them account for 1/3 of the world's vineyard area. And if you pick 33 of them, they account for half of them. So it's, and if you go country by country, for example, if you go to Argentina, you take 4 varieties. You take, let me remember this. If you take Malbec, you take Bonarda, you take Criolla, you take Cereza, those 4 varieties, they account for half of the plantations of Argentina. Okay? Then you go to another country. And I'm not saying nothing bad about Argentina, because they make some great wines and I like their wines. But you take another country, Australia, you take Syrah, Cabernet, and Chardonnay. It accounts for 60% of all the plantings. You go to New Zealand, Sauvignon Blanc accounts for 73% of what's planted. So it's quite... I'm not saying lack of diversity, but they are very good on what they do. And I do enjoy Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand from time to time. But I like Portugal because of this amazing diversity of sometimes. And I'm supposed to be an expert in Portugal, and sometimes I go there, as I said, a few times a month, and somebody say, "Hey, taste this. Have a look at this. What is this?" It's a great variety called, and they give me the name of the varieties. Have you heard of it? Yes, I've heard of it, but I have never tasted, not as a single variety. So there's a lot of, with you guys ask me a question, what is exciting, what excites you the most is this ability to keep discovering. And I don't think there's many countries that are better than Portugal in this way of sort of learning and discovering. So this is why I get excited when I speak about Portugal.
I understand that completely. I get very excited when I pick up a bottle and it's a varietal that I have not, even if it's just a portion of it, even if there's just one grape in that blend, that is something that I haven't had before, I get all giddy. I get all happy.
Yeah.
I do too. And I think, oh, we got to have this for Wine for Bet Street. I've got a notebook filled with them.
Yeah.
It's a shame because varieties like this, I mean, it takes somebody very brave to resurrect, because I said to you how difficult it is in the first question you guys asked me, why is not planted more, is because of the yield. And if you take into account is a variety which is completely unknown, so no one knows, it's difficult to sell. But in terms of yield, we're talking about on average 35 hectoliters per hectare. What is that? That is even lower than a Grand Cru Burgundy.
Wow.
Right.
So it's and this wine does not command the price of a Grand Cru Burgundy. So it's quite a difficult commercial proposition. So you gotta make a great wine and try to sell it at a decent price, and but it takes somebody quite brave to do that.
Absolutely, to be able to say this is going to be my grape that I'm going to adopt as my winery's flagship is pretty brave.
And I think that's pretty good too. Do you think, how do you see the future for the Jampal grape, like in Portugal, and do you think it can be grown outside of Portugal?
This is a great question, because some of the varieties, as we know, Alvarinho and Touriga Nacional, they travel very well. We see Touriga Nacional in USA, you see Touriga Nacional in Argentina, and now in Bordeaux. So
how about that?
Yeah, and I remember when I was giving sort of a lecture, and people asked me to look into the future, and I said, you know what's going to happen one day? You're going to have Alvarinho planted in Bordeaux, and people look at me like I was mad. And this is like 10 years ago. But to be honest with you, even I was surprised with the speed that this my sort of what I was thinking about. I knew it was going to happen at one stage, because it is a wonderful variety and it retains acidity in warm climates. Mm-hmm. So that was a forecast I had, but I was quite surprised myself with how fast it moved. With varieties like Encruzado, or in this case Jampal, to answer your questions, some varieties don't travel very well. And as Encruzado is one of them. Baga from Barada is another one, which I'm not sure it travels very well. So we might not see Baga planted elsewhere. I doubt very much that people are going to be knocking at André Mans's winery, say, I really want some cuttings of Jampal because I want to plant it. I can see why, because it retains amazing acidity and amazing freshness, talking about climate change now. And for example, I work for a producer in Croatia, so we have to plant new vineyards, and I'm looking for varieties that retain acidity. I'm not planting a vineyard for tomorrow or for the next 5 years. I'm planting a vineyard for the next 25, 30.
Right.
So you got to be looking at climate change and so on. So varieties that have retained acidity and have low pH. But the problem with Jampal is the yields are so low. It doesn't commercially. It's a shame. If the yields were good, I would say, I think in the next 10 years or 15 years, I see people planting Jampal in warm climates like, I don't know, California or so on and so forth. But in this case, as much as I like to say yes, I don't think so. Okay.
I think that the varieties that are being transported to other regions for climate change are higher yielding. It's not worth the effort, I think, in their eyes, to transport a grape variety that is going to be so limited, right? They're trying to keep their production and quality up, but to transfer a grape variety that is so limited in quantity is probably not. It's got to be cost prohibitive, right? It's just not worth it. They'll look to another grape.
Yeah, because this variety is so unknown. There is no clonal material. There's no studies on clones. So if I'm working a free consultancy for a winery for a Californian producer who's looking to plant varieties, look for like Arinto. Arinto is a variety which it can make fantastic wine. It does yield okay, and it retains wonderful freshness. So if you're looking at Portugal to plant as a source of grapes, Arinto is probably a great white. There are many other whites. There are some reds, but Arinto is a good one, and it does travel very well. It's planted all over Portugal from north to south.
Okay.
And one thing, it has to give not low yield, not high yield. I think we're talking about quality, but it has to retain acidity. It has to retain freshness. It has to be able to give a sense of place,
right?
And like Chardonnay does. If you taste Chardonnay is quite malleable, and is a variety that is able to. You can it's a chameleon, and you can taste Chardonnay and say, okay, this is from Pouligny-Montrachet. This is what you do as a master of wine exam. Or this is Pouligny-Montrachet because of this. This is Meursault because of this. So there is a sense of place. With the variety it's just doing that job, and so this is quite important. The variety that yields well, and if you look back, for example, in California in 70s or 80s, Sangiovese, when it was planted there, Sangiovese doesn't do well in California. It's not a variety for California. It does well in California. It's a good variety. It retains acidity. But the problem is when people planted Sangiovese in California, they use the wrong clones. So you have to have great knowledge, great understanding of plant material to be able to select and plant a vineyard that's not for you, not maybe for your children or your children's children. So you have to think of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, if somebody wants to, go ahead. Did you have another question, Deb?
Yeah. I mean, now we're educating people on this Jampal grape, and you don't know what the future holds. I mean, it's all about education and awareness. Do you think there'll be any type of initiatives for the grape, or it's just going to keep status quo? What
Because we'll spearhead that. With Wine for Bet Street as the first one to.
Yeah.
This is a great question. I was doing this project with the Wines of Portugal, which I still am immensely proud. It's called Hidden Gems, or called Castas Raras in Portuguese, which has been the rare grape varieties. And this is how I found this Jampal, which is basically is not to demonstrate to talk about those varieties. It's actually to demonstrate. It's not only to actually find those varieties, single varieties, and then do master classes and do tastings with the trade, with buyers, with journalists, so they could understand how diverse Portugal is. I said to you, I'm excited because there's over 250 grape varieties. But and you can read that in a book or you can hear in a podcast, but this is actually tasting the wines. So the objective really is to, aside from educating and talking to journalists and so on, is to delight the customers and to taste a wine like this. And goes back to your question, is to encourage producers to say, wow, there's people are talking about Jampal, people are talking about Tinta Grossa, people are talking about those varieties I've never heard of. And I keep getting orders for it, so I have to plant more and so on and so forth. So this is the one of the objectives is actually to get people excited, to get journalists, and to get producers planting more. And I'll give you another example. A producer you may have heard of called Luis Pato. He has this variety called Cercialinho, which is he was the only one, and he said, I'm the only one. Cecialine is great, and it's good varieties, great acidity, and so on and so forth. So when I was in Germany last week at ProVine, and one other producer came, hey, I've got a variety to show you. I say, I'm the second producer of Cecialine, which is, and it was fantastic. The wine was phenomenal. So yeah, this is one of the objectives of doing this project called Hidden Gems. Is to get everyone involved, including the producers who maybe will plant, and we have more things to talk about.
Yes, I'm all for that. I am all for that.
Me too.
Now, if people want to find out more about the Hidden Gems, is there like a website or something that they can go to so they can see what's going on? Can they follow you? How do they get to you to maybe, can they shoot you a question about it? Like, how can they find out more about you and Jampal and your Hidden Gems?
If anyone would like to shoot a question to me, no problem at all. Look at my social media. It's called Viana, which is my surname, Vianna, Viana Wine. That's my Instagram. Send me a question there. But this is a project I was doing together with Wines of Portugal. We did it for a couple of years, and then the pandemic came. But we're finding those amazing varieties, great examples, and we're doing dinners with sommeliers and so on, and journalists in different parts of the world, so London, Switzerland, and so on and so forth. And when the pandemic came, we did a few online examples, and I'm hoping that we'll carry on with this project with the Wines of Portugal. So maybe look out at the Wines of Portugal website and send them messages and pester them, because it's something that I get very excited. I want to carry on. And I think that's the future of Portugal. As I said, I gave one statistic earlier, I didn't make up from my own head, it actually exists from OIV. 73% of the vineyard area of New Zealand is planted with Sauvignon Blanc, and Portugal has got amazing diversity. And we need to do, as professionals, we need to talk about it. So what you guys are doing is fantastic, because we want them to keep doing it, so to make our life more interesting and more fun, and we have more things to talk about.
Well, we are honored, and I'm so excited to be able to introduce that. And we will definitely, in the show notes, we will definitely link up to the Wines of Portugal and put a link to your Instagram profile. And thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn put that link into the chat so that people can find you. But
yeah. And what would you want 2 things people to leave this webinar, podcast, because we turned it into both after this, to know about Jampal?
It's not so much about Jampal. I think about Portugal in general, because it's like me. The best questions you ask me today is what makes you excited, and what it does for me is it's the ability to keep exploring and learning. And I think Portugal it's a great place for you to explore. And if you want to if you're looking for something unusual and different, Portugal is a great place. This variety itself, if you have a chance, I know there's an importer. I think it's called Italian Product and Beyond. Yes,
out of Elizabeth, New Jersey.
That's it. And go and actually don't buy too many bottles, because there are only a few thousand bottles made, and I want to keep some in London. But you should explore it. It's a nice story, but it's not only a story. The quality of the wine is actually very good. So thank God for our friend Andrea Mans to have resurrected that. So a couple of things.
Cheers to him.
So 2 things is, first of all, go and explore the variety, because it is interesting, and I think you will enjoy it. And second, let's give praise to the person who brought that from extinction, which was a fellow Brazilian.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Junior, for coming on. I cannot wait to get get this bottle. My husband is bringing it to me tonight. So
I hope mine shows up.
And we will definitely put links to you and to the wines of Portugal and to the distributor in New Jersey. We'll make sure there's links for that also. And thank you so much for taking time out of what I'm sure is an extremely busy schedule for you to share Jampal and wines of Portugal with us. And I appreciate it very dearly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laurie, thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Eugenia, for putting us together.
Yes.
Thanks to Wines of Portugal for everything they do to communicate, to talk about an amazing Wines of Portugal. And thank you to Andrea.
My imaginary glass.
Yeah, mine too. Cheers.
Slancha. Have a great day or evening.
Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wasn't that an interesting grape, the Jampal grape? It's really wonderful to learn about all these different grapes and the situations that they face, and I hope they bring it back, and I'm looking forward to tasting it one day. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm Debbie Giaquindo. I am the Hudson Valley Wine Goddess, and you can reach me at hudsonvalleywinegoddess.com, by email, debbie@hudsonvalleywinegoddess.com. I'm HV Wine Goddess on Twitter and Instagram, and Hudson Valley Wine Goddess on Facebook. And if you can just write a little review on however you're listening to this podcast, I'd so greatly appreciate it. I will see you next month. Cheers.